Silver on the Tree by Susan Cooper, Part 3, The Lost Land, Chapter 15, The King of the Lost Land. They stood, staring at one another. Outside the tower, the fury of the dark rose, as if the whole world were roaring. Will hunched his shoulders instinctively, feeling the force of it like a blow. And then suddenly it was gone. The tumult dropped, vanished altogether. They could hear nothing at all but the faint hum of the wheel whirling outside. The abrupt change was more unnerving, even than the noise had been. "What are they doing?" Bran said. He was taut as a tight-wound spring. Will could see a muscle twitching at the side of his jaw. "Nothing," Will said with a confidence that was not real. "They can do nothing here. Forget them." He stared round the square room, filling the length and breadth of the tower, into which they had just come. "Look!" Brightness was everywhere. A soft greenish light filtered through the quartz-like walls of the room. It could be a cave of ice, Will thought. But this was a cluttered, busy place, as if someone had left it in a hurry while preoccupied with some great complex matter. Piles of curling manuscript lay on the tables and shelves, and on the thick rush mat that covered the floor, against one wall, an enormous heavy table was littered with strips of shining material and chunks of glass and rock, red and white and greenish blue, all among an array of delicate, gleaming tools which reminded Will of the workshop behind his father's jewelry shop at home. Then his eye was caught by something high on a wall, a plain round shield made of gleaming gold. Gwion leapt light-footed up on a table and took the shield down from the wall. He held it out. "Take this, Will. 3 shields, one once in the days of his greatness. King Gwyndo made for the light. 2 of them were taken by the light to places where danger might come, and the 3rd they left here. I have never known why, but perhaps this moment now is why, and has been all along, here." Will took the round gleaming thing and slid his arm through the holding straps and on the inner side. "It's beautiful," he said, "and so are the other 2 he made. I have seen them in other places. They have never been used." "Let us hope this one need not be used either," Gwion said. Bran said impatiently, "Where is the king?" He was looking up at a curving wrought iron staircase, wonderfully curlicued, which spiraled its way up to disappear through an opening in the high glassy ceiling of the room. "Yes," Gwion said, "up there. We should go up, but you must let me lead. We shall come to certain rooms in which you will see no one, and at last we shall come to the king." He set one hand on the curving rail of the staircase and looked hard at Will. "Where is the belt of the signs?" "It is out the battle of Mount Badon," said Will wistfully, "where Merriman took it to the great king for as much of the winning as can be achieved there. And it will be at the last encounter, too, when the lady comes and all the power of the light is joined. But not until then, and only if—" He stopped. "Arius," Bran said, his voice tight. "Arius," Gwion said swiftly. "Do not say the name yet. That must wait. Only in the sword's own presence may it be named by its name. Inside this tower. Come." They climbed the spiraling staircase, up and up through rooms that were scattered with the impedimenta of living, of eating and sleeping, and yet had, too, the strange deserted look of places left abandoned for a long time. And then Will, last in line, came up to find Bran and Gwion standing silent in a great room unlike any that had gone before. The light filtering through these walls was not cool and icy green, but dimmer, more subdued, for they stood now inside a great hemisphere, banded in gold and translucent glass, so that Will knew it must be domed up. It must be the domed top of the tower, from whose peak a golden arrow pointed out at the sea. The dome was warm, its floor striped with the sunlight that slanted in through the banded roof. And yet it was a strangely gloomy place, bringing a heaviness to the senses. The room held only one square table, set to one side, a carved wooden screen, and a scattering of big high-backed chairs, as sturdy as if they were carved from solid blocks of wood. "Gwion," said a voice. Soft echoes whispered round the dome. It was a husk of a voice, low and without strength. It came from a tall chair facing away from them on the far side of the dome. They could see nothing but the chair's back. "I am here, my lord," Gwion said. His eyes were warm, and there was love and patience in his voice, as if he spoke to a troubled child. And two from the light are with me." There was a long pause, with no sound in it except the faint crying of a distant seagull outside the dome. The voice said at last, cold and abrupt, "You betray me. Send them away." Gwion crossed the room swiftly and dropped on one knee before the tall carved chair. In his hands, the dim light through the roof. In the hands of dim light through the roof, they saw his lean, bridal-bearded face upturned to the unseen king. He said lovingly, loyally, bright as a flame in his face, "I betray you, my lord?" "No, no," the voice said wearily. I know better, but you must send them away, minstrel. In that, you should know better." Will said impulsively, coming forward, "But Majesty, the danger is too great." He paused just behind the chair. He could see one thin hand lying limp on the chair arm, wearing on one finger a great dark-stoned ring like Gwion's ring. He said in as level a voice as he could manage, "My lord, the dark is rising in its last great attempt to take control of the earth from men, and we of the light cannot prevent that attempt unless we are armed with the things of power made for our purpose. We have all of them but the last, the crystal sword, which long ago you made for us, my lord and king, and which you now guard." "I guard nothing," the voice said listlessly. "I exist merely." Will said, "But the sword is here, as it has been always since its making." His eyes were roving round the room in search as he spoke. "We may not take it unless you give it to us. Give it to us now, Majesty, I beg you." "Leave me alone," the voice said. "Leave me alone." It was full of an aching sadness that made Will long to give some comfort, but the urgency of his quest was louder yet in his mind. "The sword is for the light," he said persistently, "and to the light it must go." He was looking at a wonderfully carved wooden screen that stood against the shining wall of the dome near where the king sat. Was it there simply as a lovely object to be looked at, or to hide something else from view? The voice said with dull petulance, "You do not say must to me, old one. If old one is what you are, I have forgotten all such names." Behind Will, Bran said sharply, "But we must have Arias." The thin hand on the chair tightened briefly into life. The fingers curled and fell back again. "Gwion," said the empty voice, "I can do nothing for them. Send them away." Gwion still knelt, looking up, his face lined with concern. You are weary," he said unhappily, dropping all ceremony. "I wish you were not always alone." "Weary of life, minstrel, weary of the world." The voice was a winter leaf blown by the wind, withered dry. "No purpose, no savour. Time tosses my mind where it will, and my useless life is the empty cawing of a crow, and any talent I once may have had is dead. Let the toys that it made die with it." The slow words came from so deep a despair, like a black pit giving back no sound when a stone is dropped in, that the small hairs crawled on the back of Will's neck. It was like listening to a dead man speak. Bran said clearly, coldly, "You speak like the Mari Lud, not like a king." The fingers of the hand curled again briefly and then lay limp. Into the voice crept a weary contempt of long, long experience, faced with the blind, ignorant vigor of hope. "Boy, callow boy, do not speak to me of life that you have not lived. What do you know of the weight that drags down a king who has failed his people, an artist who has failed his gift? This life is a long cheat, full of promises that can never be kept, errors that can never be righted, omissions that can never be filled. I have forgotten as much of my life as I can manage to forget. Go away so that I may feel free to forget the rest." As Will stood, speechless, held by the dreadful deep self-loathing in the husky voice, Bran came up level with him, and all Will's senses shouted at him suddenly that a change had begun. That from this moment Bran would no longer be merely the strange albino boy with tawny eyes, obscure in a North Wales valley, where the villagers looked at him sideways and the children mocked his pale face and white hair. "Gwydno, Garan here," Bran said in a quiet command as cold and hard as ice, with the Welshness very strong in his voice. "I am the Pendragon, and the destiny of the light is in my hands, to be held or lost. I will not countenance despair. Arias is my birthright, made by you at my father's bidding. Where is the crystal sword?" Will stood trembling, his fingernails digging into his palm. Very slowly the figure in the chair leaned forward a little and turned toward them, and they saw the face of the king just as they had seen it in the rainbow over the fountain in the rose garden. A little and a long while before it was unmistakable, a thin face with cheekbones high as wings and lines carved deep in the flesh with sadness. Great channels of despair slanted down from nose to jaw. The shadows lay round the eyes like dark mountain pools. The king glanced first at Will, and then he saw Bran. His face changed. He sat there motionless, dark eyes staring. There was a long moment of silence, and then the king said, whispering, "But it was a dream." Gwion said softly, What was a dream, Majesty?" The king turned his head to Gwion. There was a heartbreaking simplicity in him suddenly, like a small child telling a secret to a friend. "I dream endlessly, my minstrel," he said. "I live in my dreams. They are the only thing this emptiness has not touched. Oh, sometimes they are black and dreadful, nightmares from the pit, but most of them are wonderful, full of happiness and lost joy, and delight in making and being. Without my dreams, I should have gone mad long ago." "Ah," Gwion said wryly. That is true of many men in this world." "And I dreamed," the king said, looking wonderingly again at Bran, "of a white-haired boy who would come and bring both an end and a beginning, the son of a great father, with all his father's strength in him and more besides. And it seemed to me that I had known the father once long ago, though I cannot tell where or when. Through the mist the emptiness is put in my mind. The white-haired boy, there is no color in him anywhere in my dream. He had a white head and white brows and white lashes into his eyes, and he wore dark circles of glass to protect those eyes from the sun. But when the circles were taken away, you could see that the eyes were enchanted. The golden eyes of an owl." He stood up shakily, supporting his thin frame on one hand against the chair. Gwion lunged forward to help, but the king raised the other hand. "He came running," he said. "He came running to me across the room there, and the sunlight was in his white hair, and he laughed at me. And it was the first music of that kind that this castle has heard for so long, so very long." There was a softening in the grim set features, like a faint glimmer of sunshine in a cloud-gray sky. "He brought an end, but a beginning. He took away the haunting of this place. He kneeled down before me in my dream, and he said—" Bran laughed softly. Will could feel all the angry tension fall away from him. The white-haired boy took a few quick steps forward and knelt before the king and said, smiling up at him, and he said, "There are 5 barriers to be broken to reach the crystal sword, and they are told in 5 lines that are written in letters of golden fire over the sword itself. Shall I tell you what they are?" And we will pause there.